What is going on, you guys? My name is Rayge, and we are back today to talk about catalysts, a topic that isn't really covered on too much going on, especially given that this is typically a big bottleneck, especially if you're in the end game and you're having this opportunity where you're bringing up new characters and teams. Well, on top of gold and trading materials, catalysts are actually becoming that third pseudo bottleneck that prevents many of us from actually bringing our characters even higher up and obviously participating in the end game mode. So having said that, we're going to be talking about that more in detail today, but as well, I wanted to analyze, what exactly is going on and how can we better prepare so that way we aren't overutilizing catalysts and we're in a position where we can pivot with new events, new characters and teams coming. We can actually be able to participate still. So first and foremost, I just want to quickly touch on where you can actually farm, right? Thankfully, they've made a lot of different avenues in the game where you can actually farm catalysts. A couple of screenshots here coming from obviously going through the hard campaign chapters. I think they're definitely one of the best values, especially as you can see to the right, spending 15 campaign energy can get you a chance here of 6 health catalysts. That's pretty good in my honest opinion. You also have the big monthly milestones here where you can see a huge multitude of the basic catalysts do add up over time when you're participating on all the monthly milestones. So it's really big and important to focus on that. Definitely something that's obviously less focused on, but we lose ourselves when we're focused on the uniques and obviously the mini uniques and materials and the character shards. But remember, you still need catalysts at the end of the day to bring up your characters to those next elevated gear tier levels. A big area as well is the supply store. So I think a big component can come from going through, when you're doing the raids. The raid orbs can add up. I recommend personally, if you're using credits, the raid store is good and the crucible. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend using gold, war, just because of the fact that they're more niche materials and you can utilize that for elsewhere. And especially if you're purchasing uniques for gear tier 18, it makes more sense to use gold as opposed to utilizing another resource. So another big one is the featured showcases. As you see right now with the game, we have this wrapping up with the Hive Mind team, but we also have out of time coming. So they're switching and doing a better job of bringing these showcase events here, which create another avenue for us to farm. And then lastly, as I touched on earlier, events and milestones are really, really big. Make sure you guys are capitalizing on, especially the monthly events where each of these milestones do compound, and you can see how notable they can be, right? Some milestones giving you 300, 450, 750, all these add up over time, which is pretty big. Next, I wanted to take a look at where exactly all these materials are going, because this was not an issue before. I think we kind of saw it with the orange catalyst, but now that we pivoted over to the teal catalyst, especially gear tier 16, I wanted to really get an understanding what was happening in terms of where the majority of the catalysts here are shown. So the big three, in my honest opinion, and damage could have probably been included here as well, but I think the big three that utilizes the most is the basic catalyst that you see on the top. We have health, and then we have focus. And as you can see, I kind of segregated this by the different modes that you're likely bringing up your teams, especially for some of the end game content. For example, getting Big Apocalypse fully upgraded, which is 23 characters at gear tier 17, level 90, you're actually spending about 13,500 of the basic catalyst, 4,600 health, and 4,200 focus. That's already a pretty notable portion. And then what I did is I also added in the Dark Dimension 6 21 tunes, including Apocalypse, if you were going to include them in that mix. And as you can see, 28,500, 11,000, and then 11,700, bringing us to a grand total here, just for these 20, if you had 21 characters, including Big Apocalypse himself, you would need 42,000 basic catalysts, 15,700 health, and 15,900 focus. This is some significant investment in the game, guys. I'm sure you can just quickly take a look in your inventory and see where you fare, but this is the bare minimum if you want to bring a full team into Dark Dimension 6 by the time it's said and done. Now, mind you, this is a snapshot in time. Obviously, folks that are going through Dark Dimension 6, myself included, we dragged it out over the span of a couple months to get the mode unlocked and beaten, right? But this is still a very sizable amount, and this is where I think a lot of players are kind of missing, the target here in terms of understanding where this cost sink is going. It's really going into Big Apocalypse himself and the Dark Dimension 6 game mode. So that's why if you guys are finding that you're having a hard time keeping up with the game, building up your raid teams, especially if there are raid characters that are not being utilized in Dark Dimension 6, well, there you have it. It's probably because of these two areas in the game where it's completely depleting all these significant resources. So even if you have training materials and gold, it won't matter because you can't bring them up to the next gear tier level because you need the catalyst, right? So understanding this is really big, guys. Now, how can we further this understanding and how can we better prepare? Well, I also wanted to take a look at, what exactly was costing us from a gear tier 16 17 and 18 standpoint to see, is there a sweet spot? Is there a way that we can kind of min-max a little bit? Especially with me being free to play, I'm always about min-maximizing, you know, how best can we utilize our resources? When is a good stopping point unless it's absolutely necessary or required? So you can see, again, focusing on just these three just to make the analysis pretty simple, but they're the most important in my honest opinion. The basic health catalyst and as well as the focus, all of them significantly increasing, right? Gear tier 16, you have 200, 180, 17, you know, is almost like a doubling factor, right? You have 50% increase from 200 to 300, 100 to 150, and then 80 to 120, exactly 1.5. And then lastly, gear tier 18. This is the one where I'm going to strongly urge you guys to reconsider here. You can see just how much more investments needed. The jump from 300 to 700, the jump from 150 to 250, and as well as 120 to 320. It's the gear tier 18 that's really bottlenecking and taking away the large majority of resources, as you can see here, right? Because you can get, you know, 3 characters to gear tier 16 as opposed to 1 character to gear tier 18. That's how significant this big jump is, right? And again, because Big Apocalypse and Dark Dimension 6 needs 21 of those characters at gear tier 18, that's why it completely cripples and depletes your account. It really does snowball gear tier 18. Thankfully, with the new gear tier 19 that's coming, we likely will see a dip here because there will be that new red gear that comes into play. So there likely will be a decrease. We don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm going to be very curious to analyze that as well. But you can see, guys, overall, I would highly recommend just stopping at gear tier 16 or 17 unless you absolutely need to bring them up even higher, or unless they're like a game-changing character, you know, like Super Scroll, Black Knight, and so forth. We really should not be trying to overinvest if we can. And that's also why I think me min-maxing the majority of my raid teams has truly translated to big savings for myself, right? And that's really the takeaway here, guys. Now I want to showcase for you, this is what my current inventory balance is right now for all of my catalysts in the game. And keep in mind, I've finished Dark Dimension 6, I'm top 10 in Arena, and competing as well as I can in War and Crucible. But these are my materials and resources. You can see everything north of 10, 15K, and as well as over 40,000 basic catalysts. And keep in mind, I'm in the end game right now. This puts my account in such an advantageous position to build up new characters and teams, and now you have to think about this. And what's the secret here? Well, I've done the one thing, which is focus on gear tier 16 and 17. I think I've only taken 5 or 6 characters to gear tier 18 since I've completed Dark Dimension 6. So this difference maker is huge, guys. Make sure you're following this. I didn't realize how many of these catalysts I actually had because everyone was complaining about the bottleneck. But then I checked my account and to my surprise, I was thinking, whoa, what the heck? I actually have way more than what everyone is seeing in their accounts. And you can check the other content creators too. Mind you, I'm not as competitive in Crucible and War, but remember, I'm free to play, so I just need to min and max everything I can. But I was just surprised at how many resources I have, more than the other, the bigger content creators especially, right? So this is a big component, guys. Make sure you're focusing on gear tier 16 and 17 because that's kind of that sweet spot where you can save materials and resources and pivot when needed. And you won't be in that position here where you're bottlenecked and constrained on top of the gold and training. So hopefully this helps you guys. This is what's been working for myself. And again, it still allowed me to stay competitive in raids and arena. And obviously, as I work slowly through building up my characters and teams, I'm always trying to see what I can do and compete up for sure. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Hopefully this helps provide some insight on where the catalyst is getting spent, how best you can max your roster, as well as prepare for future events and characters and teams coming to the game. Thank you for your time as always, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.